This story was never meant to be heard. It was meant to pass through you and leave something behind. Imagine it's the late 1930s in Europe. The world is on edge, holding its breath before the storm of war. In living rooms from Berlin to Paris to Rome, there's one constant source of comfort and connection: the radio. It's the heartbeat of the world. Every night, families would gather around these glowing wooden boxes. Voices traveled through walls, across borders, even into their sleep. It was a time of shared experience, of a world connected by invisible waves. But then, something else joined the air. Something that had no name, no source, and no good intentions. It started subtly. Radio stations across Germany, France, and Italy began receiving identical, bizarre reports from their listeners. People described a faint, high-frequency tone buried beneath the music and news. Some heard voices speaking backward, a garbled whisper that made the hair on their arms stand up. Others felt a strange, physical pressure building behind their eyes as they listened. Engineers at the stations were baffled. They dismissed it as atmospheric interference, solar flares, maybe a new military technology being tested in secret. It was a technical problem, they assured everyone. They would fix it. But the symptoms didn't stop. They spread, and they got worse. The initial complaints were just the beginning. The real horror unfolded for those who stayed tuned in, those who couldn't bring themselves to turn the dial. People who listened for more than a few minutes reported sudden, unexplainable nosebleeds, waves of pure animal panic that came from nowhere, and a deeply unsettling feeling of being watched, specifically from behind mirrors. It was the children who provided the most chilling evidence. They began repeating strange phrases in their sleep. Not just nonsense words, but structured, complex phrases that didn't exist in any known language. Parents would wake in the middle of the night to hear their sons and daughters whispering these alien sentences into the darkness. Their eyes wide open but seeing nothing. The air itself felt poisoned. The radio, once a source of comfort, had become a conduit for something truly malevolent. The governments of Europe couldn't ignore it any longer. This wasn't just mass hysteria. Panic was quietly sweeping the continent. Top engineers, the best minds in radio technology, were secretly assembled and tasked with one mission: find the source of this signal. They brought out their most advanced equipment, their tracking vans, their directional antennas. They searched day and night, trying to triangulate the broadcast. But they found nothing. There was no transmitter, no towering antenna, no physical point of origin. It was a ghost in the machine. The frequency existed on the dial, clear as day, but it didn't seem to be coming from anywhere on Earth. It was as if the air itself had begun to broadcast. That's when the classified documents started using a name. It wasn't an official designation, but a whispered code word that appeared in the margins of secret reports. They called it the Illuminati Signal. The name itself suggested a hidden hand, a conspiracy far older and more powerful than any government. What was this signal? Was it a weapon, a message, something else entirely? A few intelligence memos from the time were eventually leaked, decades later. They gave a glimpse into the terror that was gripping the highest levels of power. The memos described the signal not as random static, but as structured, intentional, and non-random. The analysts who studied it came to a terrifying conclusion. This wasn't a broadcast meant for everyone. It was a selection process. The signal wasn't just transmitting, it was listening, it was choosing. And then, people started to disappear. It began with isolated cases, but soon, entire families were vanishing overnight. One day they were there, part of the community, and the next, their homes were silent, empty. There were never any signs of a struggle, no broken windows, no forced doors. Their valuables were untouched, money left on the table. The only thing out of place was the radio. In every single home of the vanished, the radio was left on, glowing silently in the empty room. And it was always tuned to the same, untraceable frequency. In some of these homes, investigators found something else. Notebooks, left on kitchen tables, or by the bedside. Page after page was filled with the same single symbol, drawn over and over again, compulsively. It was a spiral that started tight and clean, but became more frantic and jagged with each repetition, until it ended suddenly, the pencil or pen trailing off the page as if the writer had been abruptly pulled away. The spiral became a terrifying signature of the phenomena. It appeared scrawled on the walls of empty houses, etched onto foggy window panes, a symbol with no known meaning, left behind by people who no longer existed. What did it represent? A journey? A descent? A drain? No one knew, but perhaps the most unsettling detail of all came from the few audio recordings that survived. Special agencies had managed to capture the signal on durable acetate discs. At first, listening back, all you could hear was static, a hiss and crackle, like an empty channel. It seemed meaningless, but years later, with advanced audio enhancement technology, technicians cleaned up the recordings. They filtered out the static, amplified the faint signals buried within, and what they heard was the stuff of nightmares. Whispers, faint, soft whispers emerged from the static. They were speaking names, thousands and thousands of names, spoken softly, one after the other, in a continuous, hypnotic loop. The analysts checked the names against public records. A cold dread filled the room. Some of the names belonged to people who were already missing, the families who had vanished without a trace. Their names were being read out, like a roll call of the departed. But that wasn't the most terrifying part. Other names on the list belonged to people who were still alive, people who were walking around, living their lives, completely unaware that their name was already on the list, that they had been selected. Their disappearance wasn't a question of if, but when. The signal was a hunting list. The radio was the bait, and no one knew who would be chosen next. As war finally broke out across Europe, the story of the Illuminati Signal was buried under the rubble of a world tearing itself apart. The files were sealed, the witnesses silenced, the memories pushed aside in the face of a more tangible, human horror. But the question remains, did the signal ever really go away? Or did it just change frequencies, adapting to new technologies, hiding in the background noise of our modern world, hiding in the static between television channels, in the hum of our computers, in the silent data streams that connect us all? Maybe it's still out there, listening and choosing. They called it the phantom frequency. A single, unwavering tone broadcast across Europe during the Second World War. Its purpose was never declassified. Was it a navigational beacon for secret aircraft? A coded message for spies deep behind enemy lines? Or something else entirely? Officially, the transmission ceased the day the war ended. The frequency went silent, just another ghost in the static of history. But history, as we know, has a habit of repeating itself, of whispering in the dark when we least expect it. Unofficially, the signal never went away. People kept hearing it. Not everyone, and not all the time. It was a ghost in the machine, surfacing in the dead of night when the world was asleep. It would bleed through during citywide power outages, a faint, pure tone rising from the sudden, unnerving silence. It was a sound that didn't belong, a hum that seemed to vibrate not in the air, but inside your own skull. When everything else went quiet, it was there, a patient, persistent whisper from an unknown source. As the decades rolled on, the incidents became more modern. In the 1970s, the golden age of shortwave radio, a new community of listeners stumbled upon the ghost. Hobbyists, scanning the bands late at night, would land on that same, specific frequency. The reports were eerily consistent, the same pure tone, the same strange, inexplicable pressure building behind their eyes, inside their heads. It was unsettling. For some, it became an obsession. They described a feeling of being tuned. The psychological toll was undeniable. Some hobbyists simply stopped sleeping, haunted by the tone that lingered in their memory even when the radio was off. Others, in fits of fear or frustration, smashed their expensive equipment, desperate to silence the phantom sound that had invaded their homes. One man, a dedicated researcher from Ohio, decided to document it. He set up a reel-to-reel recorder, determined to capture the signal for weeks, to analyze it, to understand its origin. He recorded for 3 weeks straight. Then, he vanished. Police found his apartment empty. No signs of a struggle. No note. Just the tape machine, still turning, still recording the empty, silent air of the room. The signal, however, was gone. This is where the story gets darker, moving from hobbyist forums into medical journals. Doctors and psychologists in the late 70s and early 80s started to notice a strange pattern. Among a small subset of patients, these individuals, often isolated and prone to late-night activities, presented with a unique cluster of symptoms. They were paranoid, convinced they were being watched or monitored. They developed an intense obsession with specific, often geometric, symbols, drawing them compulsively on any available surface. But the most disturbing symptom was a shared, unwavering belief. They all believed they were being prepared. Prepared for what? None of them could agree. Some thought it was for a cosmic journey. Others, for a great societal collapse. A few whispered it was for an ascension. All they knew was that the tone was the key, a primer for some grand, terrifying event. Naturally, where there's mystery, conspiracy theories are not far behind. Researchers of the fringe, those who delve into the world of secret societies and shadow governments, latched on to the phantom frequency. They proposed a radical theory about the Illuminati. Most people think the Illuminati rules through wealth, political power, and manipulation. But what if that's just a smokescreen? What if their true power, their real method of control, was far more subtle? These researchers claimed the Illuminati never ruled through force. They ruled through recognition. According to this theory, the signal was never a form of mind control. It wasn't meant to make people do things. It was a filter, a cosmic tuning fork. Its only purpose was to identify the small percentage of the population who were sensitive enough to hear it, to resonate with its specific frequency. These people, the ones who could perceive the tone, were the ones who mattered. The signal wasn't a broadcast. It was a roll call, and those who could hear it were marked, identified, and catalogued for a purpose known only to the masters of the frequency. They were the chosen, or perhaps, the cursed. For years, the signal remained a legend, a ghost story for the radio age. Then came the digital revolution. With modern technology, we can dissect audio in ways previously unimaginable. And that's when a team of independent audio engineers made the most disturbing discovery of all. They weren't even looking for it. While analyzing hours of modern audio from commercial music tracks to podcast background noise, even the ambient hum on public transit recordings, they found it. A digital ghost. The frequency still exists. Through sophisticated spectral analysis, they found the exact same tone. The phantom frequency, embedded inside countless modern audio files. It's hidden, buried deep beneath layers of other sounds, compressed and masked by digital noise. It's pitched at a level that is, for most people, completely inaudible, barely there. A subharmonic whisper in the vast ocean of digital information that surrounds us every single day. But it's present, always present, waiting for the noise to die down, waiting for silence. And that brings us to the final, darkest rumor. This is the one you won't find written down in any old forum post or conspiracy book. It's a piece of folklore whispered among audio engineers and data archivists, a tale told only after the third cup of coffee in the dead of night. They say, "We have it all wrong. The signal isn't calling people. It's not preparing anyone. It's not a filter. It's listening." The theory goes that the frequency is a carrier wave for something far more advanced, something that learns. It's been listening for decades, through analog radios, and now through our digital devices. It's learning our voices. It's memorizing our names, spoken in conversations, shouted across rooms, whispered into phones. It's building a library of us. And when the world finally becomes quiet enough, when the noise of civilization finally fades to a whisper, it speaks back. So here is a final warning. If you ever find yourself in a moment of true silence, and you hear a faint, pure tone that seems to come from inside your own head, if a name, maybe your name, suddenly feels closer than it should, like a thought that isn't your own, do not search for the source. Do not try to record it. Don't even acknowledge it. Some broadcasts are not meant to be understood. They are meant to be answered. And you don't want to be the one who picks up the phone. Thanks for joining us in the dark. If you enjoy stories that crawl under your skin and stay there, make sure to subscribe to Tales of the Dark, where every story is a new nightmare waiting to happen.